Kate Mila Falcher, welcome to Irish Granny Helen, and welcome to my dear friend, Debbra Lupien, voice of the AKASHIC Records. And who are we doing today, Deborah?
Lana Turner.
That's
the
right.
bombshell.
Well, in a manner of speaking. I promised I'd be nice. So let's see what we can find out. I guess we'll just start asking her questions because let's go directly to the source. So I will have made, by the time you see this, I will have made a short video with quick biography of her life. So if you want to get filled in on what happened in her life. So she was born 4 days before her mother's 17th birthday. So how did that turn out? I mean, I just remember what I was like when I was 17. It would have been some kind of crime against humanity if I'd had a child at that age. Ridiculous age, too young. I'm curious, in those days, not as unusual. And I'm just curious, how did that work out? Was her mother ready for it?
Okay, so Lana, what can you tell us about your childhood? How was it being born to such a young mother? How did that affect your life? It's like a blank slate. So there was a lot of confusion is what it feels like. It was a big challenge. And it was all unknown and new. So they were paving new ground as far as she and their mother together in their life. So in that respect, it set her up to have different expectations of her life. And it made her stand out from other people because she had a different entry into the world than they did. It also gave her this ability to stand back and look at the big picture, to assess the situation rather than just diving in the way a lot of people do. So she actually feels like that was a benefit to her later in life, that she was able to have that ability, that insight.
Would she say that another way of putting that is she had to grow up quickly? Lana did.
Is that how you would describe it? Sure, you might call it that.
So when she was 9, something happened in her life that I feel like this was repeated several different times in her life. It seemed to be the defining trauma, the genre of trauma that she had to face repeatedly. Her father was murdered. He went to a craps game, got a lot of money, stuck it in his pocket. Oh no, stuck it in his shoe. And he was found bludgeoned to death where he walked home, and his shoe and sock were off. Somebody knew that it was there. So it was somebody who knew, and they never did solve it. Did she talk about the impact that had on her as a child?
Okay, can you tell us about that experience with your father and losing him at such a young age? We were all stunned. It was a deep imprint on me at that age. I felt like I was unmoored. I didn't know where my boundaries were. I didn't know which way to turn. More confusion, uncertainty about the future. And I was damn scared, to be honest. I didn't know what was going to happen because my mother, to be frank, was not all that mature and good at handling life and the world. So there was double uncertainty. And yes, in this situation, it did cause me to have to grow up faster because I had to step in and fill the gaps that were left for my mother so that we could survive.
Her mother ended up working 80 hours a week as a beautician and kind of farmed Lana out to family friends. And that turned out to be kind of a disaster. Can she talk about that?
So could you talk about the experience with your mother being required to work so many hours and leaving you alone. It was more confusion, not knowing which way to turn, having to rely on friends to understand the way to be in the world, to be successful, to be accepted, to fit in. And fitting in was really important to me. So peer pressure played a large part in my young life. And I can see now that that was not a positive thing. And it did set me up for a lot of heartbreak in the future.
Interesting thing that happened to her in her life. When she was 7, she convinced her mother to let her convert and become a Roman Catholic. I just thought that 7, that was very interesting. And it said that she wanted to be a nun. Could she talk about that?
Yeah. So, what can you tell us about wanting to be a nun at 7? What caused that? Oh, she was a very romantic little girl and she liked to watch movies. And she was impressed by some movies that she had seen. And she thought being a nun would make you the most special person in the world, that you would be revered, that you would be above it all and out of the fray of normal humanity. And something about that appealed to her.
I have to tell you something funny. I wanted to be a nun. I think every little girl practically who's raised to go to a Catholic school with nuns wants to be a nun. But for me, it wasn't to be revered. It was because their lives seemed so stable and taken care of. They didn't have to pay for housing. They always had enough food. They didn't have to worry about where their next meal or their clothes were coming from. It all seemed very secure and unmelodramatic by contrast to some situations. And I wanted to be a nun who was an archaeologist. Except I couldn't figure out how to get around this one little problem. I hated to get dirty. I didn't want to have to dig anything. Okay, that's enough of that nonsense. There's kind of this romantic story about Lana Turner and how she was discovered sporting a very revealing sweater, sitting at a soda fountain counter. And that's not true. But I want to hear her version of how she got discovered.
Okay. So please tell us your version of how you got discovered. I put myself in the right place at the right time to be seen. And I'm not embarrassed to say I used my assets, of which I had many. I learned at a young age that you've got to take advantage of the advantages that you are given in life and work them if you want to get ahead in this world.
Was she friends with Joan Crawford?
Okay. So were you friends with Joan Crawford? Well, I think you might better call us rivals.
Oh, I think Joan Crawford viewed everybody as a rival.
Yeah.
Remember her feelings about Norma Talmadge? And so what happened was she skipped school and went to a malt shop and just caught the eye of this reporter for the Hollywood Reporter. And he, nowadays, if some creep came up to a 16-year-old, hey, baby, you want to be in movies, but he took her to meet Zeppo Marx, the Marx brothers.
Yeah.
Well, one of their less funny brothers was an agent. And he got her a contract. So I just wonder, what did she think of Zeppo Marx?
Oh, okay. So tell us what you thought of Zeppo Marx. He was a swell guy, all right by me. How could I not think highly of him when he opened the doors for my future? And I was mighty grateful.
The Marx brothers were from a big, very, very, very poor Jewish family in New York. They lived in I don't know, I read a book about their lives when I was about 12. So my facts might be a little muddled at this point. But very much described them living in this overcrowded kind of tenement
Mhm.
way up, many stories up. And it was so hot in the summer, they had to sleep on the fire escape. And their mother was just, she ruled with an iron hand. And they had quite the little confederacy of brothers. There were other children too. There were quite a few children, but there were, I think, 5 of them that were the Marx Brothers of vaudeville fame. And that's where they got their start. And they were all forced to take music lessons. And I kind of want to say that some of them had to share a violin, I mean, it was quite a story. It was a very funny story. Groucho Marx wrote it. He wrote the book about his whole family. It was really interesting. I'm going to throw this in here. I don't have a question about this. When she signed her first contract, she made $50 a week, which would be over $1,000 today. But that improved. We'll get to it. So let's see here. Ask questions. She became known as the Sweater Girl, and it doesn't sound to me like what she just said and what she was quoted as saying doesn't sound like it jives, because she's saying that when she made this movie in 1937 and was noticed for how well she filled out a sweater, she said it was the first time she ever was aware of her body as kind of a tool, but it sounds like she was fully aware before that.
And she's saying, of course that she said that at the time because it wouldn't have been acceptable if she had said what really happened. But it's like she was a maneuverer. She knew how to work things to her advantage, and she did.
Well, she was a survivor.
No bones. Yeah.
She was a survivor. I kind of glossed over the kinds of things that happened to her under the tender mercies of family friends who took care of her as a child, but it wasn't good, as you can imagine. YouTube doesn't let us use grown-up words, so we have to hint, but it wasn't good. She got her high school diploma working on the set of an Andy Hardy movie. They had tutors, they had these laws where they had to have certain. So I just wonder, what was that like for a teenager in those days to do that?
So tell us about the experience of going to the studio school with Andy Hardy and the gang. It was pretty boring because they were very strict. They had rules they had to abide by, and therefore they kept their thumb on us. So there wasn't the natural kind of fun you would have in a regular school. And I was a good enough student, so I was able to get by, but it was pretty much ho-hum for me.
Oh, yeah, I'm not surprised. Can she talk about the big competition testing for the role of Scarlett O'Hara? Because she tested, everybody tested, but I'm just curious what that was like. How cutthroat was that?
So tell us about your experience trying out for Scarlett O'Hara. It was so exciting to have that opportunity. And I was crushed when I didn't get it. But honestly, there was a huge amount of competition for that particular role. And I don't think it really suited me now that I look at it in retrospect. So it's a good thing that I didn't get that role. It might have changed the course of my history.
Would she agree with me? It's my opinion that Vivien Leigh was born to play that part.
Would you agree with what Helen said? Begrudgingly, she would.
Of course. I read that book and I fell in love with the book. A friend of mine who was really into Civil War history talked me into it. And I resisted because she said it was a romance and I was, above all that. And she talked me into it. And it was really an interesting book as a glimpse into that time period for somebody who knew really nothing about it. I went on to find out how distorted it was, but still, it was like fairy tale almost. When I saw the movie a couple of years after reading the book, I was astonished at the casting. They couldn't have done a better job. I mean, it was truly, to me, the book came alive. And Vivian Lee was 100% exactly what I had imagined the character of Scarlett O'Hara would have been. It was weird. And, every single actress in the country wanted that role. It's kind of incredible. How many people they had to filter through. Okay, so she got married. Where did I have her getting divorced, but I don't see her getting married. So something happened somewhere along the way here. I've missed in my notes. Oh, no. Her income went up. That was good. Her income went up to what's now $2,100. Don't know. Who was her first husband? How come I can't find him here? Who was her first husband? Ask her.
So can you tell us who your first husband was? She prefers not to talk about it. Some things are best left in the past. I guess he wasn't a positive experience.
Oh, okay. I found it. It was right in front of me. I just didn't read the sentence all the way through. In 1940, she eloped to Las Vegas with Artie Shaw, the band leader.
And how long did they stay married?
Not. Oh, they stayed married. I would say probably less than 2 months.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. It's like it was such a blip. It was not even worth mentioning.
She discovered after they split up that she was pregnant. And the studio put pressure on her to go to Hawaii and get rid of it. So the press were told that she was hospitalized for exhaustion. So let's ask her about that. When she had the abortion after she broke up with Artie Shaw. Oh, this is the one she had in the hotel room with no anesthesia. Maybe for the sake of those of us who live in a time when conditions are going backwards to where they were when she experienced that. Could she talk a little bit about that experience? I know that's kind of a sensitive topic, but I think we need to know what it is the rights we're losing.
Yeah. So talk about the experience of having to have the procedure. Well, it wasn't a picnic, I can tell you that. I do have to admit that the studio did me a favor, because if I had done the traditional thing, which girls were pressured to do, and had that child, that would have changed my life in ways that would not have been a positive, in my opinion. So I was, all in all, grateful to have that opportunity. But it was painful. It left an imprint on me. I wouldn't wish it on anybody else.
It's a horrendous experience. And, the really remarkable thing is she was one of the lucky ones. She wasn't going to a back alley, Mm-hmm. I'm sure they provide a real doctor for her.
Was it a real doctor who took care of you? Yeah, the studio made sure, because they didn't want to risk their stars.
Yeah. So she ended up doing really well in a couple of movies, and her pay went up to over $33,000 a week. I'm keeping track. It's exciting.
So is it to take that happened shortly after she had the procedure? Does she have that big
was
pay
in
raise?
a couple of movies. It was like a little more than a year later.
Okay.
Yeah. She was in a movie about what's it called? Ziegfeld Girls. And she said it was actually the first time she ever really felt like she was acting. Before that it was throwaway roles, and this one she felt good about. But she made a lifelong friend to Judy Garland. What was Judy Garland like?
Oh, so tell us about your friendship with Judy Garland. She had such a different upbringing from mine. She had started out in a family where everybody was well cared for and loved, but then it all fell apart when her mother sold her off to the studio system. That we could relate to. We were both using our talents and being used to get ahead in the world. And I have to tell you, the price was pretty high, especially for Judy.
Yeah, it was terrible what they did to her. It really was terrible. So she was in 4 movies with Clark Gable, not in a clump, but over a period of time. And when they were making the second movie, they were partway through it when Carole Lombard was killed. Can she talk about that?
So, would you tell us about what it was like after Carole Lombard was killed and your filming with her husband? Well, it really changed the energy on the set, as you can imagine. He was inconsolable, but working did help him to shift his focus and not think about his troubles. So we tried to keep him focused on getting the film finished, doing a good job, and doing it in tribute to Carole. She would want him to do a good job, to not be distracted so that he brought the whole film down because she had such integrity and professionalism. So we continued to enforce that with him. And I have to say, I really admire the way he stepped up.
Did she know, was she aware that Carole Lombard was jealous of her?
Well, how many women were jealous of me? No, she wasn't personally aware because it was just her normal way of being. So many women were jealous of her. So it's like it kind of sunk to a non-noticeable level.
I can relate. Can't you? Can you imagine? I just can't even imagine. Yeah, Carole Lombard was really jealous of her.
Yeah, I don't know why she was. And Lana says she doesn't know why she was either, really. It was silly. She had nothing.
Well, I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was more maybe a little lack of trust about what Clark Gable's choices would be. You know, I don't think it was as much a reflection on Lana Turner as it was, you know, he had a reputation. Well, he was dedicated to her, though. I think it was kind of a wasted energy on Carole Lombard's part, but nevertheless, that's the story. So Lana Turner made a lot of money for the government selling war bonds, and they put her name on the nose of bombers and planes and bombs and stuff. How did she feel about that?
So tell us how you felt about having your name on bombers. What was that like for you? It was mixed feelings. On the one hand, it was a source of pride that I would be memorialized in that way and, okay, let's be honest, worshipped in that way. But on the other hand, it gave me creeps thinking of those bombs being dropped on people and the devastation that they would bring to the land and the people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a real mixed bag for me.
I'm glad she thought about it.
It was the way of things back then.
Yeah. Oh, hey, not much has changed. So I have a question in general about her marriages, because now she gets married again after a week of dating, and the marriage lasted 4 months. Does she have some insight now into what it was she was looking for that she wasn't finding?
So can you tell us, do you have insights about what you were looking for in husband material that you didn't find? Well, you see, that's the problem. I didn't have the father figure growing up. So now I understand that subconsciously I was looking for that security, that feeling of safety that a father would have provided me with. But in a marriage, you don't want a father, you want a partner. So I was looking for the wrong thing, signing up for the wrong deal, and it just didn't work out.
It's kind of incredible how many of these women in Hollywood have the same issue. It's like being drawn to the attention because they're seeking, love and attention that they can't even label at the time.
Validation.
Yeah, like
They
Joe
really need it.
Crawford, and who was the other one that we did it? Same thing. Wasn't Betty? Not Betty Davis. Barbara Stanwyck.
I don't remember.
She seemed stronger. Well, she was on her own when she was like 15, living with her sister. Remember that? Yeah, it's interesting pattern. So they got divorced. She discovered she was pregnant and she remarried him. But this is really sad. I have to say, my heart goes out to her. She had an RH negative blood type. And so what that means is, in a kind of glossing over the details, is that the baby's blood is usually incompatible, RH positive, and they fight each other, and the baby gets this kind of anemia and might be rejected. So it's very difficult to carry a baby to full term when you have RH factor. And if the baby survives, it's usually got this terrible condition that's a gigantic Latin word that I didn't even bother, but it's kind of a blood disorder. And babies that were born in those days with that, sometimes they try to save them by giving them full body transfusions. Nowadays, they have a blood factor that they inject, and it's all good. But that's why they need to know. You need to know your RH status if you're going to have a pregnancy. She lost a number of pregnancies, stillborns, or born at 7 months and died, or born at 8 months and died. Very, very sad. Her daughter Cheryl, when she was born, had a severe case of RH fetal anemia and almost died. And I'm just wondering, how did that affect her? Was she, she kind of mentioned it was a good thing she didn't have that first child, Did she still feel that way, or did she look forward to having those children, and was it a real blow?
So tell us about your experiences with finally having a baby after having so many losses. It was scary. I was so grateful to finally have a baby that even though she had problems, she was relatively healthy. And it was devastating because I knew what to do about pregnancy. And I wouldn't have kept getting pregnant if I hadn't wanted a baby. So never think that I simply didn't want them. There's a lot of judgment in the world, and people think that because I willingly had the procedure, that meant I didn't want babies, and that couldn't be further from the truth. So I was very grateful to have that baby. I wish that things had been better so she could have been healthier, but I was grateful for her.
No judgment here. Don't take that wrong. I think it should be a choice. No judgment at all. I was just curious if, how do I explain this? Nowadays, people know they're pregnant when they're 2 minutes pregnant,
Yeah.
In those days, sometimes people didn't know they were pregnant until they were 3 or 4 or 5 months pregnant. And so I always envision a situation where you go, oh, shoot, I'm pregnant and it's relatively far along, and guess I'll have it. Or the man kind of insists on it, right? And so I just wondered what the circumstances were. A terrible, terrible position to be in, wanting a child and then having this devastating condition. Well, she divorced him. And I have a question about her divorces. This is before community property states no fault divorce. So somebody had to be at fault, and they would hire people with a camera to set up a liaison and get pictures so that you could sort of have evidence in court Look, he's immoral. I'm leaving him. But seemed like an unusual number of her former husbands had gambling issues. Was that just a story for the divorce court?
So, what about that? Did you really choose husbands that all had gambling problems? Well, sad to say, yes, I had a type, and the type who liked to live on the edge, have that excitement. I was attracted to that. To my own detriment, I have to say now. But yes, it
And
was true.
guess what just dawned on me? Her dad died because of getting robbed for gambling winnings.
Oh, oh yeah.
Do you think maybe I asked her if do you think subconsciously that might have been a driver,
So was
motivation?
that a subconscious driver for you being attracted to specifically gamblers? Well, yeah, I can say that now looking back because they were
Yes.
like daddy. So
Yeah.
it was comfortable.
Yeah. Sometimes we surprise ourselves. We don't see the patterns in ourselves. Yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't even occur to me. And I've written this out and I've recorded it and it never even occurred to me. She made The Postman Always Rings Twice. It was like her big moment. This made her a star. She felt like it was the first time she really was acting, And I just wonder, she could talk about that. What was it about that role?
So tell us about The Postman Always Rings Twice. What was the magic about that role that everything came together and clicked for you? Great script, great cast, timing. It was a good time in the country for that kind of a movie. And let's just say a level of magic where all the pieces came together and the whole was greater than the parts. I was very fortunate to have that opportunity and I made the most of it.
Who was the guy? Was it John Garfield who
Yes.
played? Oh, okay. I wouldn't know him if I saw him. I wouldn't recognize him, but for some reason that name, stuck in my head. So she had several affairs. No judgment. I don't care. But I kind of wonder about her taste in men. I mean, Frank Sinatra, really? But the one that I'm curious about is Howard Hughes. How crazy was he when she went with him?
Okay, so tell us about your relationship with Howard Hughes. Oh, honey, it was the ultimate. He would make your fantasies come true. He lavished everything on whoever his current love interest was. But the problem was he wasn't really interested in long-term relationships. He was like each relationship was an experiment to him. What could he do? How could he shift? And I didn't want to be anybody's science project. So it was a short-term thing, but it was fun while it lasted.
Was he showing signs already then of his eccentricities that got really out of control later?
So did you notice the eccentricities that we've all heard about? Yes, I can see now that they were, but at the time, they weren't that outlandish that they would have called attention. So it was just at the very early stages of it. And he was rich. He was a little eccentric. People expected that.
When she dated him, did he cut his nails?
Did he cut his nails when you dated him? He was a rich man. He never cut his nails.
No, I don't mean did he do the work. I mean, did he get them cut? Did he let them grow long?
Oh, okay. So did he keep them trimmed or did he let them grow long? No, they were manicured. When she knew him, they were manicured.
Is she aware of how he ended up?
So are you aware of how he ended up? I know it was peculiar and sad, but I didn't really pay attention to it.
Well, he completely lost all interest in self-care. He had handlers who were taking advantage of him. And he was, naked and filthy and unwashed and unkept hair and nails that were all, Guinness Book of World Record style. Yeah, it was really bad. Okay, so by the time 47 rolled around, she was considered MGM's most popular star. She made the highest salary of any woman in the United States. She made $250,000 a year at that time. What does she think about the disparity between the money the women made and the money the male stars made?
Can you talk about that? The disparity in pay? Oh, honey, that's as old as time. The men never give us our due. We have to find other ways of getting our needs met. And even though you might think that you're modern and independent, it's still there, that always old boys club. And I'd be surprised if much changed anytime soon.
I think maybe it's just you and me at our age, but I think we recognize that. I mean, it never went away. I think it went underground, and it's popping up its ugly head now, the misogyny again. It's bad. It was much more overt in her time, but I fear we're going backsliding into that. It's scary. So she married a rich guy, a millionaire, socialite brother of the owner of the New York Yankees. I just don't equate. I know on one level this is stupidity on my part, but I'm always taken by surprise when people assume that that if you're associated with a sports team, you're a millionaire. Do you know what I mean? I don't think of baseball teams as being the source of large income, but they are. The owners make money, and I don't really understand that. I mean, I understand intellectually how that happens. I just don't get why that would happen. It's the values, I don't get it. So she made some more not such great movies. But she made a lot of money. She made $4.8 million. Oh, the movie made $4.8 million. Okay, never mind. Let's see here. Today, she brought in the box office for this movie. Today, you know how much that would be equivalent to? Check this out. $63,368,852. You best believe MGM had to be nice to her. And she had another unfortunate pregnancy that didn't end well. The baby was stillborn, which has got to be a certain kind of nightmare.
Yeah.
And it took her 3 years. Did she suffer postpartum depression?
So would you say that you had postpartum depression? Definitely. They didn't really understand it back then, but that's absolutely what it was. And all of that talk about you got to buck up and get over it and move on is just not helpful. They need to stop doing that to women.
Well, I think we've made some progress there. I think people are much more aware. And I know for a fact, because I have daughters, that have had children, that when you get pregnant, the midwives, the OB people, they're on top of it. They know to look for it. So that's positive. She had an affair with Fernando Lamas, making the Merry Widow. He got out of hand. We can't use the words. Mm-hmm. But he became physically, he got fired. Let's put it that way. I'm running out of words. Oh, God. Let's see here. No, she got rid of another husband for gambling. That's interesting. She married a guy called Lex Barker. She earned the studio $50 million, but she felt like they gave her bad roles all the time. It was really annoying. She was happy they didn't renew her contract. She didn't want to deal with them anymore. So this guy, Barker, she had another stillborn. This is very sad. And this guy, Barker, she divorced him because of accusations that were made from her daughter. You know what I'm saying? And Lana waited for him. The daughter told her. She waited for him to come home and met him at the front door, forced him out of the house at gunpoint. Good on you. Good for you. I impressed. Not a lot of women do that. Good for her. So they got divorced. I'm not advocating violence. It was simply the threat. Then she did 20th Century Fox's movie Peyton Place. And this was like a gigantic success. And she was really smart. I think this is great. She agreed to not take a salary. She took a percentage of the box office, and it was a gigantic hit. She made a fortune. She got nominated for an Oscar. Okay, so then things took a bad turn. She was making the next movie, and she started being aggressively pursued by somebody who was anonymous. And it turned out that the guy was using a fake name because he didn't want her to know that he was associated with organized crime. His name was Johnny Stompanato. But she found out who he was. She found out who he really was, and she tried to break it off. But he got physical about it. And they had many breakups and reconciliations. You get the impression of like a stalker. Am I correct in assuming that?
So would you characterize Stompanato as a stalker? I wouldn't say that originally, but yes, after it was all said and done, the tendencies were really stalkerish. He was one of those men that felt like he could have anything he wanted and nobody could say no to him.
Yeah. Well, he was beefy, and he wasn't afraid to get physical. He actually put something in her, was it food or drink? Does she know?
Do you know? Did he put something in your food or your drink? She says drink.
And he took pictures of her, compromising pictures, to use as blackmail so she wouldn't leave him. So he was a piece of work. So they had a big confrontation while they were filming in London, and he grabbed her around the neck. And I wonder if she knows this, that they've done studies now today, and that they know for a fact statistically that if a woman is grabbed around the neck, her risk of being strangled to death by that man is astronomically high. Mm-hmm. So not at the moment. I mean, if somebody ever grabs you, even just briefly, end it, because the odds are really not in your favor. She tried to get him deported, and he showed up on the set and threatened her and Sean Connery with a weapon. And Connery grabbed it off of him, which, that's pretty impressive. And Stompanato ran off, and the cops caught him in London, and he got escorted onto a plane by Scotland Yard and sent back to the United States. So in March of oh my goodness, she traveled into the future. I wrote March 2658, but it's March 26th, 1958. She went to the Academy Awards, and she was a presenter, and he was mad that he couldn't go with her. Why could he not go with her?
So why couldn't he go with you to the Academy Awards? Johnny, that is. Oh, the organizers let her know that his type was not welcome.
So this is the story. When she got home, he threatened her. And he threatened he was going to cut her face and ruin her career. And then he would do her in, and her daughter and her mother. And her daughter, who was 15 at the time, heard this, freaked out, grabbed a kitchen knife, and was coming to her mother's defense. And as she was running in with this in her hand, the story is he came out and that was it. What really happened?
Okay, so can you tell us what really happened with Stompanato? He was being more threatening than usual, and the anger level and the threat of violence was just off the charts. That much is true. My daughter was there. She did witness what happened, but she wasn't the one who actually did the deed. He was after her, and that forced my hand. I had to protect my daughter.
When you say that he was after her, I'm not sure I understand what you mean. He, that night specifically, he was threatening her, or in general, he was pestering her?
Okay. So can you clarify that for us? Had he made advances towards her in that way, or are you talking specifically about the incident? A little of both. He had made certain moves that made me nervous, that could have been an indicator of things to come. So that was in the back of my mind. I was worried about that. And then that night, everything came together. It crystallized. And I just knew if I didn't take action then, something really bad would happen.
Something bad would happen, yeah. So did the studio know the real story?
Did the studio know the real story? No, she never shared it with them.
So where did the plan come up? Where did it come from for Cheryl to take responsibility?
So tell us how you came together with the story that ended up being shared publicly about what happened. It was her idea. She presented it to her daughter. She explained to her that this was the way that she could keep her mother without losing her to the system. And she was a good actress. She took the part and she ran with it because she knew what the stakes were. It was life and death for her.
Okay, so I'm not asking this question as a judgment. I'm just more interested in the psychology of it. Cheryl had a rough number of years after this, and she wasn't necessarily easy before that. But afterwards, it seems to me that there was real trauma, psychological trauma for her around this whole thing. And am I making the right assumption, or was there more than that going on with her?
Okay, so can you address that? Was there trauma with your daughter because of the story that you publicly put out, or was there something else bubbling up under the surface? I would say it was mainly because of what happened with Johnny. That was a heavy load for her to carry. She was worried about me. She wanted to help. But then what none of us counted on was the way that people turned against her, and her life changed because of our choice. And for both of us, there were conflicting feelings because on the one hand, you realize it's a sacrifice for the greater good for the family, but it came at a high cost to the individuals.
Okay, somewhere here in my notes, I forget, I think it was Barker. Cheryl came to you with allegations much after the fact that he had been interfering with her for a long time. Is that true? And do you think that contributed to Cheryl's imbalance?
So Can you tell us, was Barker interfering with her for a very long time? Was that a true story? She learned after the fact that it was true. She had been so busy with her career that she hadn't really noticed it at the time. Although, in retrospect, she can see there were certain behavioral changes that she should have noticed. So she's owning that.
Well, I hope she understands that predators are very clever about hiding what they're up to. And very many times the adults don't notice, and children are intimidated into saying nothing. So I would take that self-blame with a block of salt, because she was victimized too, in a sense. You know, predators are crafty, sneaky.
Yeah, but she says, I was the adult, she was the child. So she is putting a lot of it on herself.
Yeah, she is, and I just want to assure her that uh, I understand why she would feel responsible, because she was her mother and she wanted to protect her. But that's the horror of the situation, is that predators come and interfere with that relationship, and break that trust, between child and parent, making the, it's part of the crime. It's part of what they do. It's disgusting. And
But there's a pattern there too, and she's not giving herself the allowance for the fact that she did not have a good role model as a mother, someone to teach her how to be a mother.
yeah,
She had to grow up very fast.
yeah,
So she was flying by the seat of her pants.
yeah. And there wasn't the kind of help in those days that we have now. We have access to family therapy and trauma therapy, and people get divorced and everybody in the family goes into therapy, and there's less of a stigma about seeking help when you really need it. Well, like she was saying about postpartum depression, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Yeah, it was ridiculous. So yeah, there's a whole different attitude towards it now. So then she married a guy that was from the May Company family. You know, the May Company, the store. Are you familiar with that?
Is that Macy's?
No, May Company. Maybe
Okay.
it's a California thing. It's like Macy's. It's like the Broadway store. It's like Goldman Sachs. Is it Goldman Sachs? No, Saks Fifth Avenue. Saks Fifth Avenue. It's like any of those big department stores with fancy stuff, and I know I've seen the May Company in California. I know there was one in LA, so it must be a California company. But he was a millionaire, and he had a ranch, and she joined him on the ranch. Who else did we study about that did that? That we read about that did that? Anne. Oh gosh, I can see her face. She's kind of a film noirish actress. She married a rancher in Australia. It was Anne Baxter. And it was just a disaster. She ended up alone in the outback on some kind of emu ranch or something. And after being a great actress and famous and everything, Anne Baxter?
Yeah, I know who she is, but I don't remember that we talked about that. It's totally up and over.
I might have talked about it with Sarah Jordan Hines, when we did her
Oh,
book. Yeah, she was in that book that she wrote. Anne Baxter was in that movie.
All About Eve.
Yeah, she was Eve, Betty Davis.
Yeah.
And do you know who she was? I didn't know that until we covered the book. I was just shocked. She was Frank Lloyd Wright's granddaughter. Doesn't that blow your mind? That blew my mind. Anyway, let's move on. I'm easily distracted. So then she got married she got divorced, and she got married to a guy called Robert Eden. And he was 10 years younger than she. He was a Hollywood producer. She got her last major starring role, Madam X, which she got a big Italian acting award for. And then she got divorced because he was unfaithful. So they were only married for a few years. They were married actually longer than some of her marriages. And 2 weeks later, she met a hypnotist in a nightclub and married him. I have to ask about this. I feel bad laughing, but you have to admit it's pretty funny. She met this hypnotist. Tell me about the hypnotist.
Yeah, he must have been good.
Yeah, mesmerized.
So, tell us about the hypnotist. She says, it might sound funny now, but it actually really was. He used his powers on her, and she, for whatever reason, was susceptible to that. And before she knew it, she was mesmerized. And it was almost like she could see herself making these choices, not being able to do anything about it.
No. Well, he robbed her blind. He stole $35,000 worth of investments and $100,000 worth of jewelry. So he was very good at what he did. Then after she divorced him, she claimed she was celibate for life. She said, I always wanted one husband and 7 kids, but it turned out the other way around.
Do you know, was there ever a story about her and Irving Thalberg? Because I got that they had a relationship.
Ask. I don't have
I
that.
mean, that's what that just came in.
She had a lot of affairs.
This was like a real love affair. And for whatever reason, they weren't able to be together. I think he was married.
He was married to, wasn't he married to Norma Talmadge? Am I getting that name wrong?
I don't know who he's married to, but he was married and unavailable, but they had a love affair. That's what she's saying.
He was married to the actress that Joan Crawford was jealous of and considered her main rival. Oh. Am I thinking of the wrong person? He was a big Hollywood producer. Isn't that right?
That's who he is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He had the fixer, Eddie. I can't remember his last name. The guy who was instrumental in knocking people off. Yeah. Okay. So did she want to talk about him? Is that what you're saying?
It just popped in out of nowhere. So she must have, because it was like a special relationship to her. And she's kind of proud. I'll ask that. She was kind of proud they kept it secret. So how old were you when you were involved with him? 34.
So it would have been when? In the 40s?
When she was 34?
Yeah, how old is she? I mean, what year? Was she born in the 20s? Yeah, she was born in 21, so it would have been 52. That's about right. So 52.
So you're saying it was in 1952?
Yeah, in the early 50s.
Yeah, around that time.
Yeah. So he was still married, huh? And she kept it a secret.
She's saying he was married. And just there's something about it. I'm not getting exactly the detail, but it's a source of pride to her that they had that special relationship and they were able to keep it a secret in Hollywood. It's something she holds really close to her heart. Like maybe they had a past life together or something. There was a deep connection.
Well, being able to keep a secret in Hollywood, that's an accomplishment in and of itself, yeah. Right?
And she's saying he's the one that got away. She really loved him.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm trying to remember what he looked like. He had dark hair.
He was tall.
Oh, he's tall. I'm thinking of a smaller guy. That must not be the same person.
Or I'm remembering it wrong. I have a sense of him being a tall man.
So how did she feel about acting on the stage compared to acting in movies? Oh,
So tell us about acting on the stage versus in the movies. Acting on the stage felt to her like being a cat on a hot tin roof. You didn't have the leeway that you had in film. Didn't get all those do-overs and fixes. So you really had to be on your toes. And the competition was intense. There was a sensibility that stage actors were superior to film actors. And she felt that intensely. She also got a lot from people that, she only got the roles because of her looks, not because of her talent. So she was always fighting against those stereotypes. Stage was important to her because she really wanted to earn the bona fides. She needed that validation. So again, we come back to validation.
yeah. So very close to the end of her life story here, we get the information that she struggled for 30 years off and on with alcohol. Could she talk about that?
So, is it true that you had a problem with alcohol? Yeah, there were a lot of nights where that was her only solace was a bottle. So
Is it
tell us
true?
a little more.
Is it true she only weighed 95 pounds?
Is it true you weighed 95 pounds? Not all the time, but sometimes.
I haven't weighed 95 pounds since I was 4 years old. I can't
Well,
even
I
imagine.
was small boned.
Oh yeah, me.
Small boned.
Yeah, I'm big bone. All 5'2". Okay, so in 1980, she had a religious awakening and returned to being a Catholic. Remember, she was 7 and she converted. And I think that, her life is kind of bookended by this sort of spiritual searching. And I'm wondering if she could talk about that from a context of like karmic search or spiritual purpose that she maybe neglected in the middle. She started out with it and then came back to it at the end of her life. Did she talk about that?
Yeah, so tell us about that. Your spiritual journey. Was that really a big part of your life? Because Helen is saying it feels like it was a bookend for you. So help us to understand what was going on there. Now, when she was young, she needed that stability. So that's why she gravitated towards it. And she had some friends who were Catholic and they seemed happy. They seemed to have great family lives. And she wanted that for herself. So that's why she was drawn to Catholicism specifically. And then she kind of romanticized the whole thing. But then as her life moved on, she got into Hollywood. She got away from her connection to spirituality. And then, as happens with many people, when she got older and she started thinking about fewer years left ahead than behind, and it made her aware that there needed to be something greater in life. She needed more meaning. And so she was seeking it out. And she says, if she had been born in this time, she probably would have been a psychic because she did have that ability. It just was never developed during that lifetime.
Sadly, I think that's true for most of us. I think it's something we bury. Society doesn't necessarily accept it very well. I had this conversation earlier today with somebody, and it's the same thing for most people. People will tell me all the time, well, I'm not psychic. But, I knew all this stuff that was going to happen when I was a kid. And then I heard these voices telling me not to do this. Or I asked, well, where do you suppose that came from? Okay, so her last screen role was in the TV show Love Boat. And how did she feel about that?
So, how did you feel about Love Boat? It was a lark. I had so much fun. The rules are different in TV than they are from film. And you could just let your hair down, relax, and enjoy. And by that time, I'd been doing it for so long that I could do it in my sleep.
How much of that do you think would you ascribe to not having the studio breathing down your neck?
So, what do you say about that? Well, there is still pressure because in TV they do have standards as well, but it is different. You're right. And they were always managing me, pushing me around like a chess piece, putting me here, putting me there, constricting who I was, what I was, when I was. So there was more latitude in TV. It was more freeing, and I enjoyed it.
If you had it to go, I know this is kind of a ridiculous question, but I'm just curious. If you had to do it again, go back again, um, would you, do you think you would have chosen acting?
So, what do you say about that? Would you have chosen acting? That's a really tough question. There were a lot of positive things about acting. It opened doors, it presented a lot of validation, a lot of opportunities, but there were some big time trade offs. I'm kind of on the fence about that.
What's
I
the
don't
other
think,
choice?
well, she said she wouldn't have necessarily, again, chosen the Lana lifetime because she knows better now. So, what would you have chosen?
Yeah.
Other, what would be your choice now? She's saying she would be like a modern day hippie, teaching people to let their hair down, relax, enjoy their lives. So she would be like a spiritual leader.
I was going to say she'd have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, probably.
That's hilarious. I love it. I think that's great. So, what does she feel like her purpose was that lifetime, or her lesson? Did she have an overriding lesson or purpose that she came up to the end of her life with?
So, what do you say about that? A purpose or a lesson that you took away from the lifetime as Lana? Well, the purpose was learning to get over being victimized. And
Mm.
I certainly had a lot of victimization in my lifetime. I did not learn the lesson as well or as soon as I had hoped, but I did make progress. So that I'm happy about.
I don't think any of us does. I don't think any of us learns fast enough or well enough or early enough. Life is hard. Life on earth is really hard. Are you ready to do it again?
So are you ready to incarnate again? She says, what makes you think I haven't?
Well, I don't know. That's why I asked. I mean,
Yeah. So have you incarnated again? Yes. So are you
oh.
male or female? She's a man this time.
Hmm.
Okay. And how old are you? 12. So
Oh,
you're,
well, we're going to have nothing to do with you in that case.
yeah.
12-year-old boys. No, thank you.
But she's saying, listen, I'm bringing in the divine feminine as a male, bringing in that wisdom and that knowledge. And that's the purpose this time.
Oh, well, I have a great question for her. I was involved in I don't know, I won't go into all the details. I'll try to preserve anonymity. But in the process of doing this moment, there was a conversation had with some sort of other dimensional entities that were a collective. And they told us something really interesting, and maybe she can verify it. They told us that there are more girls being born, more men who describe themselves, which with a term that I really can't stand, but there's a good purpose for it. They describe themselves as girl dads, you know, and far more people being born that are part of the LGBTQ community. And the reason for it is that our energy, the yin and the yang, the male and the female, is completely out of balance. Too much toxic masculinity. And the attempt is being made to rectify that. And I just wonder, she's come back as a 12-year-old boy. Is she gay?
So, as a 12-year-old boy, are you gay? No. And I want you to understand you don't have to be gay to be in touch with your feminine side.
I know that. I know that, but they were telling us that there's more of that happening to kind of, I guess, overcompensate in a way to bring the balance back, you know,
Yeah.
or as they put it, and I thought this was lovely, to bring the joy. So that's so interesting. I thank her for sharing all that with us.
Yeah.
Really
So
interesting.
thank you. We appreciate it.
Do you have any questions?
Nothing I can think of.
It's hard to come up with questions.
It is. That's
Somebody
why
got,
I let you do it.
oh, thanks. Thanks. Somebody was giving me a hard time when we did Vincent Price. I had it written down. And, I've got all these pages of notes. I can barely read my handwriting. And I accidentally skipped over something, and somebody chastised me for not bringing it up. I feel so bad because I was going to ask it. I just accidentally skipped it. To talk about his experience working with Michael Jackson on the Thriller video, which to me was one of the less interesting things that he did in his life, but people are into it, It's hard to come up with questions that might have a broader interest. I mean, I could ask all kinds of stupid questions that only interest me, but that's,
Yeah.
why would I do that, right? So that's very interesting. Thank you, Deborah. That was so good. And hey, we solved another one.
Yeah. So do you want to just add that little piece in and ask Vincent Price?
Well, sure. Why not? Sure.
Okay. So Vincent, because he was so much fun to talk to.
Indeed.
Yeah. Could you tell us about your experience working on the Thriller project? Well, it was a real thrill, I can tell you that. I enjoyed it immensely. Michael was such a creative young man that it was a wonder to behold, and it was a real honor to work with him. I can say he taught me a thing or two. He had finesse, he had technique, but most of all, he had this massive well of creativity that seemed endless. I was in awe of that. One of the finest memories from that lifetime.
Oh, and I forgot to ask. Great. So here's a question that just occurred to me. Does he think that there's a correlation between childhood trauma and creativity?
Oh, so what about that, Vincent? Do you think there's a correlation? I think it opens a door of opportunity that gives the individual a chance to explore areas they might not have otherwise. So, in that way, you could call it a catalyst.
And there is sort of an assumption that's generally accepted these days that people who have a lot of early childhood trauma tend, when they grow up, to be more psychic. Does he find that that's true?
So, what do you say about that, Vincent? Is that true? I suppose you could say that's true because when they're dealing with trauma, they have to go deeper. They've got to explore areas of their shadow selves that they might not have ever done or might not have done until later in life. So, again, it's a door of opportunity that's opened for them.
Does he think that he'll use that whole kind of dark magic, scary, Edgar Allan Poe-ish thing that he did in his life? Does he think he'll bring that into his next lifetime and maybe be somebody who's more psychic, or maybe be like an astrologer or some sort of maybe shamanesque type of person?
Great question. So, what do you say about that, Vincent? I might, but I haven't decided yet. I'm in no hurry. I'm watching how things unfold and waiting for the right opportunity to step back. But I do know whatever I choose, it will be a very creative lifetime
Hmm.
because the creativity is just oozing out of my pores. And I'm looking forward to expressing it in a grander way in the next lifetime, and
Oh, la la.
probably as a female.
Well, a word of advice. I wouldn't be in any rush to come back. Just telling you.
Yeah, he agrees.
Oh my God. Well, thank you. I tell him that, we might be checking back in later. He's fun to talk to.
Yeah. Thank you, Vincent. We appreciate it.
I think we're done with this one.
I think so.
And that was very interesting. I learned more about somebody that I knew absolutely nothing about. I had some assumptions. It was very interesting, although I will say that something was confirmed for me, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I always felt that was the answer, didn't you? Just a gut feeling.
I didn't think about it that much because it was not somebody who interested me. But I have to say, it was very interesting talking to her.
Yeah. No, I actually was always interested in that one aspect because I just knew intuitively that that story was not true. It's
Yeah.
good to have it confirmed. Trust your gut. But when you can get it confirmed, that's always nice too. All right, then. Thank you. Another job well done. And I hope everybody enjoyed that. And we're open to suggestions. And in the meantime, thanks very much for watching. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you,
My pleasure.
all the stars in the world. Slánka foil, slánča.